And if you're just joining us, good evening. We're just waiting for a good number of people to join the Zoom room. Already here. Hi. All right, so as people continue to log on, we'll go ahead and dive in. Hi, everyone. I'm Julia with Politics and Prose. We are here live with Cecily Strong and Chanel Miller discussing This Will All Be Over Soon. You can follow the link in the chat to purchase the book directly from us at Politics and Prose. If you have a question for our speakers, use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. We'll move to questions in the last portion of the discussion, though we apologize in advance if we run short on time. Additionally, we're glad to offer closed captioning for this event via Zoom's auto captioning service. To enable captions for the event, click the CC live transcript icon at the bottom of the screen. And we do want to thank all of you out there for tuning in. We're very grateful to our family of loyal customers who keep our business and our spirits afloat. It is my pleasure to introduce this incredible book from Cecily Strong, who had a special bond with her cousin Owen and was devastated when, in early 2020, he passed away at age 30 from the brain cancer glioblastoma. Before she could attempt to process her grief, another tragedy struck, the coronavirus pandemic. Following a few harrowing weeks in the virus epicenter of New York City, Strong relocated to an isolated house in the woods upstate. There, trying to make sense of Owen's death and the upended world, she spent much of the ensuing months writing. The result is This Will All Be Over Soon, a raw, unflinching memoir about loss, love, laughter, and hope. Befitting the time-warped year of 2020, the diary-like approach deftly weaves together the present and the past. Strong chronicles the challenges of beginning a relationship during the pandemic and the fear when her new boyfriend contracts COVID. She describes the pain of losing her friend and longtime Saturday Night Live staff member, Hal Willner, to the virus, and reflects on formative events from her life, including how her high school expulsion led to her pursuing a career in theater and, years later, landing on SNL. Cecily Strong is an actress and comedian best known as a standout Saturday Night Live cast member. She has entertained viewers with a variety of beloved SNL characters featured on Weekend Update and earned rave reviews for her impressions of Jeanine Pirro, Senator Dianne Feinstein, and Melania Trump. Cecily previously co-hosted Weekend Update alongside both Seth Meyers and Colin Jost. In 2015, she headlined the White House Correspondents Association dinner. Strong will be in conversation with Chanel Miller, a writer and artist. Her memoir, Know My Name, was a New York Times bestseller, a New York Times Book Review notable book, and a winner of the National Book Critics Circle Award. She was named one of Forbes 30 Under 30 and a Time Next 100 honoree, and was a Glamour Woman of the Year honoree under her pseudonym, Emily Doe. On behalf of Politics and Prose, please join me in welcoming Cecily Strong and Chanel Miller. Thank you both.
Hello, hi.
That's an intro.
I know.
Hello. I'm so happy to be here with you this evening, Cecily.
I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for doing this.
May we please begin with you turning to page 222 of your brilliant book. I would love to hear you read the first paragraph that takes place on August 21st of last year.
Right. August 21st, 2020. It's late August now, and I'm feeling myself start to slowly get sad. I've always been sad this time of year. I remember not quite having the vocabulary as a kid to describe how I could smell the end of summer in the air, and it would make me want to cry. It's like I've been on the run, wild, and that's what summer is, possibilities. And now I'm slowing down, heading into fall, work, responsibility, cold weather, and darker days. And I have to look side to side to start taking inventory of what I've gained and what I've lost somehow along the way.
So how are we doing this August?
You
Considering
know,
it's been a year.
it hasn't hit me yet. I think it'll be closer to the end of August. It's when it's the smell really of fall. And I've been, lucky enough to be very busy, and that has distracted me. I haven't gotten to slow down yet.
Yeah, and that's when it will hit.
Exactly. Yeah.
I want to start by talking about your youth. I want to let you know that we were both voted best personality in high school.
Wow.
Yeah.
You could tell.
Yeah.
That's why we get along.
That's correct. So you tell the story about how in high school you describe it as a little bag of crappy pot. It was found in your backpack by security, which led to you being dramatically handcuffed and escorted out of the school and then expelled, and then you drop out. But then you end up going to an art school in Chicago and studying theater. And then when you're 23, you were a server serving in a pasta shop. And then when you were 26, you had your first comedy gig on a cruise ship called the Norwegian Jewel. And then a couple of years after that, you auditioned for SNL, and one of your skits was about a lady bringing like a forbidden pineapple on the cruise ship and then telling her she can't take on exotic fruits. So my point is that when you sat down to write, or when I was reading, it was incredible realizing like what a strange constellation your life has been. And I love how you reflect on how your life has never taken a linear trajectory, but that you embrace that veering off. And I think so many, especially young people now, have really broken trajectories, and things don't look at all like how they're supposed to, and they may feel like they are behind in some way. So can you talk a little bit about how you like the ways in which you were worried about your life at that time versus sitting down and like really looking back at how it all worked out?
Sure. And number one, I'm very impressed. I think you know my life better than I do now. So I was very dramatically expelled and marched through the hallways in handcuffs, which was awful. As I was a kid that I did theater, but I still, as myself in a giant public school, wanted to be not noticed, So it was, there's nothing more noticeable than having someone lead you out in handcuffs. And my identity sort of had been to be a straight A student and someone who was good at school. And then I wasn't welcome there anymore. And I think, then luckily, I got to go to a Catholic school instead of the ombudsman school program that they wanted me to do. But then my junior year, I started feeling like I was falling through the cracks. It was sort of my first feeling of this is bureaucracy. And I was like, I'm a straight A student and I'll have to be a 5th year senior in order to get enough gym credits to graduate on time, and a class called consumer education. So I dropped out, and I didn't know. At that point, I thought, I'll get my GED or something. And then luckily, then we found the art school, and I got in there and I sort of felt like, oh, I'm with my people again. And I had felt very small and sort of like I didn't have a voice for a year, and I got it back that year. And I did correspondence courses and graduated on time. And so it's sort of like, although, it's tough to, I wish I hadn't have been handcuffed and walked through school, but it was, something else nice happened. And I didn't judge it as something bad because it wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. And I've sort of have found that in my life, if I'm open to the things that's not the path that I'm supposed to be doing. And if I don't judge myself as losing because I'm not on that path, then I can discover some nice things. It's sort of like the idea of chosen family. I'm not married and I don't have kids, but it was like, I'm going to buy a house. And I did. And I live with my friend Rashida in LA. I live with my friend Kevin here. And it's sort of, I get that family and we get each other. And it's sort of, it's been nice discovering the other paths.
Totally. I also love in your book how you talk about mental illness. Like you've had depression since high school and social anxiety, and you faint when you see blood. And, and you're like, I take this medication and this medication. But something that I love so much is that when you say,
It's got to stay humble.
When you say, I have depression, and it just sounds like saying the sky is blue, and you hold both of those statements in equal weight because both are true and both are just like a natural part of this world and being human. And you also talk about your sensitivity, like the fact that you sobbed extinguishing a wasp's nest. But your dad, on the other hand, you talked about how your dad lost his father when your dad was only 17, and how he never sort of actively reflected on that grief, even though it was very heavy for him, he kept it locked up. So I was wondering where your openness comes from and your willingness to share. Was there somebody who allowed you to do this? Are you just giving yourself permission to do this? Do you feel you owe it to Owen to just pour yourself out? Like, how are you enabling this openness? Because it's really a gift.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think, yes, I'm certainly more emotional than everyone in my family. At this Mother's Day, my mom came to do SNL and I hadn't seen her in like 2 years or something. And I remember walking down 57th Street, like about to see my mom. And I was crying, like, I'm going to get to hold my mom's hand. And I don't know when the last time I've done that. And I see her and I'm crying and she's like, why are you crying? But I think in writing this, she was the first to read my book and I knew she would be. And she started emailing me and I was like, she's writing like I am now. And she started reflecting, and it's nice to have anytime they start to open up. I also, my dad, I got them this Storyworth gift that gives them prompts about their life. And my dad told this beautiful story about traveling for football games with his dad. And it was sort of, sometimes there is something about sitting down by yourself and writing that allows you to open up more. But I think, I've asked myself the question a lot, like, where did I get it from? And I'm like, I guess acting school. That's like group therapy.
Yeah.
You have to be in touch with things. And then, yeah, I think, the part of me that would want to not share it because I'm worried about someone thinking poorly of me or being too vulnerable. That part of it. I do always just go back to, I'm getting to share my cousin, and that's the most important thing to me right now.
Mm-hmm. What were you most nervous about while writing the book?
I don't know that I was nervous writing it because I don't know that I even actually accepted the reality that it would be a book that we published. Writing it was a lot like therapy. I think in publishing it, it's still, I'm always afraid of certain details being singled out when it's supposed to all go together. And I didn't want to seem like I'm looking for sympathy or I want to complain. There's all these, like, it's sort of, I don't even like to say what I was worried about because those are those thoughts that are not helpful at all. It doesn't really matter if someone doesn't get it, then it's not for them, and that's okay. And they're not for me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I do think when you're writing in a lot of pain, at least for me, it makes me a lot less self-conscious because the pain is the dominant thing.
Right.
And writing is like a secondary, it's like the side effect of the pain that's just happening as you're like trying to stay afloat. And it's only when it's like on paper and released and other people's eyes are on it, do you start like second guessing things or doubting certain areas or questioning the language. But I think when you're processing it, it's so urgent and it needs to be put down that you're less worried about all the little, that like petty.
Right. And it's always, like the thing I'm most worried about always is like the negative thought that I have in my head. It's like, if you see someone else say it, then you think it's true for a second. So it's always like, you have to remember that's not true. What is true is what you said, like that pain's way worse than feeling shitty because of somebody not liking something I wrote.
Totally. Yeah. In the book, there's like, I love it's like stream of consciousness, self-loathing.
Wow, you get me.
But it like hits right here because I think it's the exact internal dialogue. I don't think most of us sit down to translate or put on paper, but it is the one that's like constantly going in our minds. So I
used to call it like the tornado. My tornado's starting. Yeah,
I like that. I want to talk about, so for people who don't have the physical copy of the book yet, I want to show you something brilliant that Cecily has done. And the brilliance is this. There's a whole section of the book that is blank. And Cecily prefaces it by talking about her first love, which ended up becoming an abusive relationship. And instead of delving into the details, you give us these blank pages, mostly because he doesn't want the world to know what happened. So it's this piece of you that we'll never get to meet because someone else is gatekeeping that piece. And it's an essay of everything you can't say. And it's incredible because I think we all have lots of empty pages and we all possess stories that we can't share due to safety or because we're not allowed to. And it's the first time I've ever seen blank pages published. So that was unbelievable to me. And then the other reason why it was so powerful is because often as survivors, in order for something to be true, you are required to explain it in graphic detail. You have to have visual evidence, and society always asks for more and more and more if you want to be believed, but you refuse that logic and you tell us nothing. And so the omission is really haunting. And you just show us that you don't have to lay out your pain in order for it to be real. And like you said, everything still happened, even if you don't talk about it. So this was just a really smart way of still letting this hidden piece of you breathe a little bit and be seen without giving it full shape. So can you talk about like how you landed on having this blankness, how you may have like pitched it to your editor, like, hey, I'm just going to have 11 pages of white because I've never seen it done, but I love what you did.
Thank you. I mean, and you really described that beautifully. And it certainly wasn't, and it didn't come from that feeling. It was sort of, I had written 11 pages and then sent it to him thinking it was nice to share, because I also was saying like there was love there. And it's something that's like, I'm embarrassed too. I feel shame. And then he just shot it down so fast and it was so painful. And it was like a shock that it was still painful, but it was like, oh, so this just won't be mine. And I will never get to have this. And so I said there were 11 pages, and it was like kind of an angry thing. Like, well, now here's 11 empty pages of a story that's not mine. And I think, my editor, Sean, there's not been a lot of having to convince Sean to do things. He's been super supportive and helpful. And, I'll go back and then say, but we don't have to put that in the book. And he's like, no, yes, we do have to put that in the book.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm so fascinated by all of it because you present so bold and so visible and wild, but you're telling us that like all of that laughing and humor live like so close, like shoulder to shoulder with this grief, and you're constantly fluctuating between them. And even there was a day when you're quarantined upstate, and for the afternoon you have to become the governor of Michigan. I thought it was so funny because like most of us, we have to like show up for Zoom, but we don't have to like embody a governor. So is there any relief you have when you get to become different people? Do you get to momentarily like step out of your just that like immediate pain?
Absolutely. And it's not always, sometimes you can't do it. I couldn't do that first SNL at home. I really wasn't there. It was a very tough week. We found out we lost Hal, and then I was like sort of broken up with, and then we did our first Zoom table read, and I'm seeing my friends and seeing what my job is. And it was like the reality of this weird new world, seeing each other in boxes on a screen. And it's like, to me, I'm like, then we're never in the same time zone, even because we're always ahead. There's always that time lag. And so I just wasn't quite there. But then the other shows, it is it's not only a distraction, and it was very hard work. I'm so bad with everything technical, and all of a sudden, like I have to do every job that's being done on the show. And it was like, I remember at one point, and luckily I had my friends, Kevin and Matt, living with me. And it's like, we had this giant green screen hanging from the stairs, and I walk out and Kevin's ironing a green screen and I'm sticking bows on a dress. But I think it's also, it's like playing, if you remember, that's what we do. It's like being a little kid and you get to play with your friend. That's sort of what my job is.
That's true. Yeah, you said you have a wig collection. What was your first wig?
I have a wig collection here now too. I was just wearing a wig the other night. My dad was here. My dad was in a gorgeous curly wig.
So you share your wig.
Yes. And I remember like even in high school, my senior year, I remember my friend Chris Mann coming over, and we would hang out, and I would just sort of, without saying anything, just like hand him a wig, put a wig on. And so then it's so, because it's like, I just like to see how it changes. Then all of a sudden he's talking to me and it starts to be like that. It just always adds a little bit of whimsy.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So play.
Yeah, play.
A good coping mechanism. You talk obviously a lot about loss in the book, and you say you are one of many asking how to live with colossal loss. And there's Owen, there's a friend that got hit by a train. Like there's so many deaths throughout the course of our lives, and there are so many that are sudden, where people are just like severed out with no explanation, and you never get one. And you ask the question, what's a life become when you take so many people out of it? You ask a lot of these big questions about these vacancies we have, but I love how you don't answer them, and you don't force neat endings. And a lot of it is inconclusive because it's a loss you grapple with every day forever. And so I want to know, even if grief can't necessarily be solved and there are no like concrete answers, what changed for you in your grieving or your relationship to grief when you entered the book to when you were like spit out of writing it? What changed?
Well, I think it was partly because of part of what I was doing in writing was also, and I think sort of prompted by my editor too, where he kept saying, his question was, how did he have that attitude through his cancer? And it was sort of like, I said, I don't know. And because when I think of that myself, just like that fear, I feel like I'm frozen in that fear. And he just lived so well. And it was sort of, so I had this amazing kind of navigator to think that hope and positivity is such an active choice every day. And so it's like, I'm writing these questions down because I don't want them to be hidden and inside me, and I'm holding on to them. So I'll act them out in some other way. So it's like, I'm getting them out. And then it felt like in the Owen of it all was like, I got to let it go today. I won't answer that question today.
Yeah.
And I let it go. And it felt like we got into this really nice rhythm where we would, have our family dinners, and then Kevin would read something out loud that I'd written that day. I hadn't read anything out loud until the audiobook, which was like a super strange experience too. And then it was out and we would talk about it. And then we would have like a dance party. It was so strange. It was like catharsis happening that day and that night. I was looking through pictures recently. I don't know if any of you have done this. I recommend it if you want to give yourself a little journey of, what pictures I had taken during from March to June or something. It was like, I think I took a video and a picture every day that I went outside with my dog, just because to see that green. Yes. And it was like, I'm in this green and it's so peaceful. And I have to remind myself, and it was so amazing that I took the same bad picture every day. And then I was like, wow, look how much we're singing and dancing. Yeah. And I remember it as such a stressful, sad time, but we had so many of those nights because we got that stuff out.
Yeah. Absolutely.
As much as you can. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was probably a reaction to the reading.
Yeah. We would cry and then dance and then sing into the woods.
May I ask what your audiobook experience was like? Because for me, I realized it was best if I turned out all of the lights and read in the darkness, because it's so memory heavy that it helped to just block out the present surroundings. Mm-hmm. And I was like in the story because it was on a glowing iPad.
Yeah, right. Yes, mine was as well. It was it felt like I could have written another chapter in the book about recording the audiobook. It was a studio in Rhinebeck, and the guy who ran the studio, I remember the first day I started reading, and he halfway through said, I can't believe you wrote about Adam Schlesinger. And I was like, yeah, no, he's not I don't know him, but it was a thing that stood out to me in the midst of a billion bad things happening at once. I remember thinking that was really sad. And there were just so many weird connections and coincidences. And at the end, everybody there, we were all crying, and it felt kind of intimate in this. And he was showing me his vegetable garden, which is similar to my vegetable garden. And it was just, I just felt so connected to all of them. And it was like, I realized how much I'm talking to my cousin. And it's like, to say it out loud, to talk to him out loud was really tough, but also really special.
Yeah, absolutely. The advice the director gave me, I was reading it just like I read a story or books, and he stopped me and he's like, say it like you're actually speaking to them. And then it was super emotional. Yeah.
Yeah. I only stopped to cry twice. Like if I had to take my moments. And I thought, knowing me, I thought it would be more, but I was, it's sort of emotional all the way through, but I only had to and it was good. It's good to let that out too.
Are you surprised by when grief hits you, or is it hitting you in different places than it was a year ago? The things that make you cry change?
I think I've always been a crier, but I probably cry a little more often. And I think now, because of COVID, I think there's still a lot of weird traumas that are lurking that we haven't, that I'm like, I kept getting so sad when the sun was going down. And I was like, oh, I'm having like FOMO because it's not daytime or something. Then I was like, what? Number one, I don't say FOMO ever. And I was like, why is it making me sad that the sun's gone down?
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of weird things lurking for a lot. And I think I can't be the only one. And I think people are sort of acting out. I mean, there's like, you see someone duct taped to a airplane seat and you're like, yeah, there's some trauma out there that hasn't been talked about.
I completely agree. And I do think it's going to surface in more subtle ways, because it's odd now that it looks like the gears are spinning and people return to patterns, but internally we're like, there's no way we're intact.
Right. And I think people are being like, well, why did I just cry in the middle of the crosswalk? And they're not. My hope is that people like take a second to check in with themselves. Like, why did you cry in the middle of the crosswalk?
Ask those questions. Are you writing as frequently now?
No, I actually haven't been, but this was much more of an exercise last summer over the year to sit down and write that much. And I think it's good to have that. And I do that when I need to, but I also have been lucky enough. This book has opened me up to a lot of really great discussions with people like you and, other great thinkers and speakers and feelers. And so I've gotten to get that out that way.
Yeah. And I also would like to ask Lucy's story. You didn't include Lucy's memoir in the book and how she was rescued. Is there a story there?
Well, the story is, I got her in LA and I live in New York, and I wasn't planning on getting a dog, but I love dogs. And I had connected with Best Friends Animal Society because I think at the time I had Twitter, I think I said something about this show because of course I'm watching a dog show on National Geographic called Dogtown. And then they contacted me and Amy Wolf reached out. And then she was like, you want to come look at puppies? And I said, well, of course. And then I kind of went like, well, what if I got a dog? Could I get a dog? And then I went on their website and looked at the dogs that were available for adoption. And there was one I thought was really cute. And I asked them, like, is it weird to have a type? That I'm like, I want a dog that looks like this. And they said, no, that's normal. So that's solved. She's a little black dog, sort of straight hair. I feel like she's got like dark wavy hair, long legs.
Like you.
Yeah, I wanted my biological doctor. And then I was looking at these dogs and playing with puppies, and I hadn't quite bonded with any. And then we were going to leave, and they came in and they said, hold on, Frida just came in. I think you'll like her. And she walked in and she was Lucy and like sat on my lap. And then my friend Sam said, no, does she have something on her feet? And the rescue lady was like, oh yeah, that's poop. Yep, she has poop on her feet. Yeah. So she was Lucy Poop Feet Strong for a while, but that's how I knew she was my dog. And I had to fly her home. I mean, it was totally impractical, but I knew she was mine.
It never makes sense, but you can't question it.
Right.
I would have foster dogs and be taking them to their adoption events, and they would poop in the car and sitting in it. And I would just like open all the windows and hope that the poop would dry and like before they met their potential owner. Or just be like squatting next to my car, wiping them vigorously. And then the people would be like holding them. And then I'd be like, is there poop on their elbow?
Do they? Yeah. Actually, when I drove Lucy home that first day, my dog growing up loved car rides. Lucy's terrified in the car, and I didn't know her yet. And it's like, I'm looking on the seat next to me and she's got her hands on there and she's like, and she pooped and peed and threw up. Like, oh my God,
Good,
what have I done to this dog? Yeah.
Through all the holes. Well, I also wanted to ask about, I mean, your life is uniquely vigorously present and fast. Like the pacing of your life, you're literally on live TV every week for 8 years. And that's such a harsh contrast to when the pandemic hit. So I imagine it was an extreme amount of gaping emptiness for you. And so in all of that time to sit and reflect, was it the first time you, like a lot of these memories of other deaths or friendships, or, you know, you talk about all kinds of loss, not just death, but people who have left, you know, all these, was it coming up for you because of the quiet and the silence and the sitting?
Yes. And I think that's probably true. And because as you were saying that, it's like, well, I'm also very good at doing nothing, like better than anyone I know. And then I sit down and it's like, I do puzzles, but I realize in my doing nothing, I'm always like just going, like trying to turn my brain off with puzzles or something. And so I think it was like, I was surprising myself, you know, after playing Governor Whitmer, and then I remember, you know, they were like, you got the beer wrong or something. And then I remember thinking like, well, and it was so special to me to get to give this shout out to Michigan. And I was like, I love Michigan. Of course I love Michigan. And then I realized, well, oh, I have this warm feeling because I lost my friend there. And like when I was 19, and it's not like I'd forgotten. It just wasn't, you know, it's something that you pack away because it's, you think you deal with it at the time and then you pack it away because it's painful. And so that was kind of the first one, I think, that I opened up and realized how it had these loving connections to my present day. And so maybe that was kind of a gift to go uncover these things and live in them for a minute and remember again, you know, because in all of this, I think it was, I kept feeling this love and devastation at the same time. There was so much love though. And so it's like remembering in Erica's story, the love that the town showed us, you know, the radio station shouting out the people on the lawn. And when I went to outside the Jimmy John's where her crash was, and I'm picking up her headlights, there's a little like pink memorial. And I just, you know, this car pulled over and these people got out and this woman said, was that your friend? Mm-hmm. And I just said like, yeah. And then she said, I'm so sorry. And she hugged me. And it was like, that's why there was so much love involved too in that really hard time.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really nice because they probably register as like blinding pain moments, like just like black boxes of like a death or
right,
a really bad era of life. But then when you really sit with it, maybe some of those lighter memories come back, or you remember that car who slowed down to stop, or just like you said, like looking back at the photos and seeing dancing videos. It's like, I feel like they're really traumatic feelings, mostly the negative ones, just like sit in our bones. But if you actually have the courage to like confront them, they're never completely bad. Like they're always tinged with something good. And I think even when you're reflecting, you're actively grieving over Owen. You're always centering the love in the grief. Like it's never pure sadness. So I think that's amazing. You keep them connected. Okie dokie. I am going to be switching over to some audience questions.
Oh.
Their hands are wiggling up in the sky and they're ready to ask. So I will begin I just want to make sure I don't want to ask. Well, I can always ask whatever I want. Okay.
You're allowed.
Yeah. There's some questions about the title of the book. Can you talk about its significance, and were you contemplating other titles?
I actually have to. So the title of the book is all my editor. It was one of the, I think initially when I was writing things, I would title them and not with a date. I had little titles and we wound up changing that. But one of those pieces was This Will All Be Over Soon. And our first sort of talk about what we think the title should be, Sean said, I like This Will All Be Over Soon. And it was like, oh, of course. And then we were all shocked to know like there wasn't a book with that title already.
Yeah.
It just felt like it was perfect. Yeah.
It's a very good phrase.
And the designer friends always point out that it's like, because of the colors, it says "This all over will be soon," which is a thing the design people are very into. Yeah.
That's so funny. It's all over. I see it now.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So is there anything that you realized about yourself through writing? They asked this question for me too, but you go first.
Okay. Ooh, I feel like, are you sure you don't want to go first? I bet you'll say something beautiful. Okay.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know. I think it was like the realizations were all on the page. I think it's like you'll read anything I realized in that moment. And I think where I ended up, I feel like I healed myself a lot. And I feel like I opened myself to a happy ending and even like saying that. And I think I have Owen's voice in my head a bit more now, in that trying to be less negative or just trying to like keep myself from qualifying a positive statement and saying, well, I feel happy, but I'm not all the way happy. Or it's like, yeah, it's a happy ending, but it's sort of, so I'm trying to get better at that. And that was all from this whole process. And I think I'm still learning things and getting connections and like being open to more magic and finding other magic stories.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing, I have a quote from the book. Owen and Lita. Lita's his sister. And you say, Owen and Lita cheered for me and still do. Not because they think I'm in need, but because they recognize something I don't. And I think there's something that happens in loss. It's not only that we lose them and who they were, and we miss loving them, we also miss the way that they loved us.
Yeah.
Like there's certain people who you like lose that lens of seeing yourself. And that sounds selfish to say, but there are people in the world who are just so good at loving without question. And when they apply that to you, it's such a magic and you feel good in their presence. And then when they're gone, you're like, am I not good anymore? You know, you lose that too.
Yeah.
But you captured his way of loving. That was very special.
And I give it to myself, even with him not there. I still make him love me.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a question from Zara, who is 14. She says, how did you choose your playlists for the dance parties?
Oh, Zara. It was I don't know. It was really, what's funny is Kevin and I were kind of bullies to Matt. We would always be like, Matt, you don't get to choose the music because you always pick like a whispery, sad English song. It was a lot of like, it started off a lot of musicals because it just felt like this is such a, like, this is so insanely bad. It's dramatic and almost funny. And I remember I had this idea at one point that I was going to take a video singing Peggy Lee, Is That All There Is, every night. We only did it once, but so it was a lot of musicals at first and then like big ballads. And then we did like a fake Lilith fair at one point. It was just kind of whatever felt fun that night.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Thank you, Zara.
Hope you're satisfied.
I say thank you because I was like, that's a bad answer. Good answer.
No. Jillian asks how your garden is doing, specifically the woodchuck drama. And do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're growing? Because in the pandemic, it sounded like you had perhaps a stock of basil, a little bit dire. But
yes.
More plants now.
It's insane that it started with this tray of basil that then I was like, oh, right, I need a pot. I was like, I kept that little tray inside and then waited for my pots to arrive from Amazon. And now I just cooked last night. I had green beans and salad. I lettuce and parsley and dill, oregano, cilantro, tomatoes, cucumbers. I have a yellow sunflower and a red sunflower. And in fact, my friend Lola came to help me with my garden, and she was grieving. She lost her mom and it was really tough. And she was helping me and she said, these are sunflowers. And she was like, my mom's favorite flowers are sunflowers. And so then I was even more determined, said, well, I have to make sure I protect these sunflowers. And now it is the tallest sunflower. It's so big. It's like blooming and it's so big and beautiful. And it makes me think of Lola's mother every time I'm out there. But I will say, and the woodchucks it's like it started out and it was funny. And now it's an everyday struggle. It's like I am living Caddyshack. I have like chicken wire and I want to I wish I could sit down and reason with them and be like, look, let me have this. I'm not good at this, please. And so I've got yeah, is there something else I can give you? Can I grow you something? I look insane because of that. My dog got in a fight with a baby woodchuck.
Wow.
And it was so scarring. And I was out there like in my pajamas and I grabbed a big stick and I was like, Lucy, no, Lucy, no. So, and now I have like
mouth to the woodchuck.
Basically, I was like, am I going to have to? Or Lucy, it was like, I can't see my dog kill a woodchuck and I can't see a woodchuck kill my dog. Now I have taken kitty litter from my boyfriend because I've read on my farm boards that kitty litter helps. It doesn't. And then I have this powder that's like dried blood and pee. I don't know. It's crazy. I'm ready for it's winter. I need them to hibernate again.
So in conclusion, blood and cat litter don't help.
Well, they do for a couple days, but these woodchucks are determined.
Yeah.
They just ate a pepper plant.
That's very dramatic and and inappropriate.
I'll say thank you.
I'm really sorry. On top of everything else. You talked about how I think it was Owen's mom planted daffodils when he was born, and you saw them bloom in April, which is his birth month, which is a lovely little signal.
They opened on his birthday.
Wow.
At that
April,
halfway through the day, 6th. Erica's April 4th. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Your memory is really impressive. So Lita told me she planted them on the day he was born, but then Laurel texted me and was like, that's funny. No, I didn't, but I planted them around then. But, and it was actually Jack that pointed it out because I kind of didn't want to say it. I didn't want to sound too woo-woo, but we walked outside and I saw that those flowers had opened and he went, wait, those weren't there this morning. They just opened. And I was like, okay, you see it too. It's special, right? This is special.
Yeah, it is. Robin asked if you could tell us more about him and your relationship. I love that when you came to New York to audition, it sounded like he was there at the time. And so you got together and were singing karaoke right after your auditions. It's so sweet because it was a huge turning point in your life. I imagine it was a very potent moment of happiness. If there's any others you'd like to share.
Yeah, I lost touch, and they were much younger than me growing up. And so when he showed up at that audition and all of a sudden I was in New York again, I was like, oh, hello, cousin Owen. And I only have, my family's very waspy. So we're a small family. I only have a couple cousins. And so it was kind of like, okay, well, you're hanging out all night. This is kind of cool. Oh, you're fun. You're like a fun person. And then they would just keep showing up at things until I finally stopped thinking it was weird that they were showing up, and just let myself like enjoy it and let them become like little siblings to me. And then it's what I say I'm so happy about is that after he was diagnosed, it sort of cleared the way for us to start saying, I love you. And so I got like a year and 10 months of getting to tell my cousins I love them and have them say it to me. And that felt very lucky. And then even another story. So one of the times I auditioned and came back to New York, I was staying at the Empire Hotel, I think it is. And like Owen and Ed came and we got pizza. And I remembered that because then when I came back to New York, because he had just passed away, my friend Cayenne texted me and it's like, are you able to get out of your apartment? And I was like, what are you talking about? And she said, well, there's a flood down the street. And there was right there at the Empire Hotel, like where we had pizza, it was flooded. And it was also where he went to school. And I remember thinking like, this is it's like, we're all so sad that somehow New York uptown is flooded and it's flooded right there. And that's where I felt like that's all my tears are right there.
Totally. Yeah, it is an unusual occurrence, but also special. You said that when he was diagnosed, you just like blatantly would express your love. Has that applied to other people in your life too? Just with like the higher stakes of the pandemic, have you become more verbally expressive and urgent about your love and communicating it to people?
Yeah, I think I have. And it's still it's a choice, it's like an active, you have to make the switch still. I'm not just like now a very open person yet, but it's sort of like, if I feel like, you know what I want to tell you right now, when you write a text or something and then you don't send it. So I'm trying to send those more.
Yeah. Even in your book, you have a nice moment, like on Father's Day, right? Texting your dad. And it's like over the expanse of a lifetime, there's potential for so many different emotions to happen within one relationship, but nothing is really like capped. Everything keeps evolving.
Right.
But it's really beautiful. Everyone has to read it because it's incredibly raw. Nicole wants to know, what is something that you do for comfort?
Oh, I feel like all I do are things for comfort. I do a lot of puzzles, the gardening for sure. Cooking. I like having, feeling like my day is mine is if I can do a little bit on the Peloton, which is not a humble brag because I'm certainly not in great shape, but it makes me feel better mentally. And it's like this little challenge that I've done. And then I go and I take a shower and then I cook dinner. And it's like, especially if you can cook with your own vegetables, it's pretty incredible. And I've been doing Sunbasket. I highly recommend if anybody's looking for one of those cooking things, but they have great food.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're a pepper short for dinner tonight.
Yeah. They're having a great pepper dinner outside.
Mm-hmm.
The woodchucks.
Do you have any advice for dealing with grief in daily life?
No, I mean, also because I think like everybody's grief is different. I think
True.
my only advice would be, I wish people the love in their grief, the chance to explore the love that's also in their grief. Which
Right.
maybe you can do if you sit down and ask yourself, you know.
I like that. I wish people the chance to explore the love that's within their grief. Yeah. I saw a question in here. Who asked it? It was about, oh, Annie said, did you ever go back to your high school reunion? I feel like that would have been in the book.
No, but I'll tell you what. So my first SNL episode in 2012 was the night of my year's 10-year reunion.
No way. That's such
Yeah.
an amazing debut.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Now, is that what they call a glow up? Sort of.
That's actually unbelievable.
Yeah. It's wild, right?
Big screen. Yeah. That's amazing. My 10-year was last year. So
Did you go?
it didn't exist.
Oh, right. Oh my God. What happened last year? Why didn't you go?
But I'd also like to think.
But you don't believe in COVID, do you?
Correct. Not a question, but just a moment of thanks. Living with grief doesn't have an ending or a fix. Instead, we learn how to live alongside it. In dark times, and the more we share, the more we help each other. I've just started talking to the people I lost, and it helps. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
There's a line in your book. Okay, I'm just trying to make sure you realize what you've done. Like, so one line in the book
that could be interpreted a lot of ways.
You said depression is exhausting. I love that line because often when you're depressed, you're just sleeping. So people wouldn't think it's exhausting. So that was like such a prominent point to me.
It's funny you say, I've said today, because I've had this long day and saying goodbye to my dad who was visiting. I kept crying and I was like, I've had so much love today. And I said, love is exhausting.
Yeah, but it's like all of these contradictions and things coexist. Like, I feel like that is the point.
Yeah.
You also say, I've never really known how to explain who I am. I seem to just keep talking or writing in this case and hoping someone gets a sense of me that way. Did you feel like that sense came across? Or
I mean, I guess I'm still trying to figure that out, even so. That there was a really nice New York Times piece that David Skoff did. And I, because it was like the first one that's about me and there's no barrier, that's like, this is about the show. So it's not me necessarily, but there was like hours that I was going, how does this read? Do people, and then I was getting these texts that were like, what? It's lovely. It's very nice. Are you kidding? But it's like, I still couldn't get a sense and I still can't. I'm not great at that yet.
Yeah.
Getting a read on what people see or hear. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate it. I think it will resonate with so many people and give them permission. Even like in the blank pages, I was like, it made me want it, like, it filled me with sort of the anger of like how much gets deleted and omitted and made me want to fill it with something I felt like I've had to conceal or something I'm worried about saying. I mean, the truths you lay out and the even like self-deprecating thoughts, you just say them and leave them and keep going. And I think that'll be extremely healthy for people to see you doing. So I really appreciate you for that.
I feel like that's a great, I feel like you saying that makes me want to have people, I hope that then people fill in those pages if they want with their blank pages. You can put them there in that book
for us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we here at Politics and Prose want to sincerely thank both Cecily Strong and Chanel Miller. I can't think of a more hopeful and lovely tone to end the evening on. Thanks to our audience out there for all of your support and engaging and thoughtful questions. Your patronage and dedication enable us to bring you this incredible programming, and we wouldn't be able to host these types of events without the book sales to support it. So please go ahead and follow the link in the chat to get your copy of This Will All Be Over Soon, or you can visit us online at politics-prose.com. And while you're there, feel free to check out the rest of our calendar for what's coming up this fall. For now, from our shelves to yours, we hope everyone out there is staying strong, staying safe, and of course, staying well-read. And we will see you next time. Cecily, Chanel, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And Chanel, thank you. Really,
Yeah.
I hope I get to meet you in real life someday.
I will fight your little woodchucks or nunchucks.
You'll fight the woodchucks with nunchucks.
All right. Good night,
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.